The man who will lead Bangladesh's new caretaker government has returned to Dhaka. Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus flying into the capital from Paris, where he'd had a minor medical procedure. He was greeted by members of the military and executives from Grameen Bank. That's the microfinancing lender that Mr. Yunus founded, which helped lift millions from poverty. He and the interim administration are expected to be sworn in the next few hours. Before that, though, he did answer a couple of questions from our South Asia correspondent, Samira Hussain.
How do you feel?
I feel good. I'm back. There's a lot of work to be done. People are excited. People know that something, new opportunities have arrived. So we want to catch that.
What is your message for people here?
Discipline. Discipline, hard work, and get it done.
The 84-year-old professor succeeds Sheikh Hasina on an interim basis, at least. Her 15-year grip on power ended on Monday when she quit as Prime Minister and fled the country. She resigned after weeks of student-led protests, which left hundreds of people dead. The protest began with students demanding reforms to the civil service job quota system, which reserved 1/3 of government jobs for descendants of the 1971 Liberation War veterans. Students arguing that the quotas unfairly benefited Hasina loyalists. Once she left, students called for Mr. Yunus to take on the interim leadership. And he then did speak at a news conference after his arrival in Dhaka, praising the student demonstrators, saying they had saved Bangladesh and the country was now celebrating a second independence. He said the first task was to restore law and order and that freedom in Bangladesh must be protected.
On our way here, we heard that law and order in the area is not being maintained. People are hurting each other, houses and properties are being burned, offices are being attacked. Minorities like Hindus, Buddhists and Christians are facing attacks too. These are all parts of a conspiracy which does not come under our purview. Our responsibility is to protect the country, including each and every person, as they are our brothers. Hatred and unruliness are the enemies of democracy.
Let's take you live to Dhaka. We can join Samira Hussain, who is there for us. And Samira, you were there at the airport when Mr. Yunus arrived home. What was that experience like? And you managed to grab him as well for a few questions. What did he tell you?
Well, as soon as he got off the plane and he sort of walked into the airport, he was greeted by members of the army and, of course, members of his staff from Grameen Bank. He was all smiles, dressed in a traditional kurta pajama, wearing a vest as well. And when I did ask how he feels right now, he said that he was really glad to be back in Bangladesh, but quickly added that there was a lot of work to be done. Now, when we went outside the airport, there were hundreds of supporters that were carrying flags, that were holding flowers, that were so excited for the arrival of Mr. Yunus. Now, remember, the people here have really pinned a lot of their hopes for the future of Bangladesh on Mr. Yunus. It was a demand by these student organizers who led these protests that eventually led to the ouster of Sheikh Hasina. Well, they demanded that Mr. Yunus would be part of the committee, or rather would oversee the installation of a new government. So that has been fulfilled so far. He's actually made his way to the Yunus Center, and later on this evening, we're expecting that he is going to be sworn in as interim Prime Minister of Bangladesh.
And Samira, one of his first priorities will, of course, be restoring law and order. You've arrived in Dhaka from Delhi. What is your sense of what it's like on the streets at the moment, and how fearful are people about what they've witnessed and the fact that there's a lack of police on the streets too?
I'm really amazed by what I am seeing on the streets. You know, from the moment we landed, we saw that there were, no police on the streets directing traffic. Instead, that was being done by students, some as young as 17, some wearing high-vis vests, others holding umbrellas. And there was actually this kind of acceptance by the people on the ground here. They were listening to these students as they were trying to maintain some kind of law and order, at least get traffic moving. And in fact, you can probably hear the traffic behind me. It's pretty much business as usual. But of course, there was a growing sense among the people here that, well, how long would this last? That perhaps it was the euphoria with the falling of the Hasina government that led to people being genuinely, or that led to people acquiescing to, listening to students as they direct traffic. But then people were really starting to ask questions. Okay, well, what happens now? Remember, it's been 4 days that they've really not had a government in place. So when Mr. Yunus says that there's a lot of work to be done, absolutely there's a lot of work to be done, because still right now you still have students that are taking up the position of maintaining law and order, but very soon people are going to want to see some sort of heavier level of security or law and order put in place.
And Samira, clearly the conditions are not there at the moment for free and fair elections, which is what a lot of people want to see, what they're working towards. But do we have any more details about how this interim government will operate, even how long they might be in power for?
Right, and so that's certainly a question I put to a lot of the supporters that were at the airport waiting for Mr. Yunus. There was a lot of questions about, well, how long will this interim government be in place, and what happens if they're not able to put in place a democratic government? But so many of the people that I spoke with are still filled with hope. For them, this is a moment that was completely led by young people, and they believe that this is a dramatic shift for the country. And just 4 days after Sheikh Hasina has resigned, they haven't lost that youthful hope. They still are believing that the work can be done and that democracy can come back to Bangladesh.
Samira, thanks so much for joining us. The BBC Samira Hussain live in Dhaka.